Hi, I'm Sean,
I'm Rhonda.
and we want to talk about being willing to grow in your marriage. Each person has to make their own individual decision to grow to have a healthy marriage.
You know, when we see that the other person is willing to grow for us in a relationship, it builds a certain amount of trust. I think when we demonstrate we're not really willing to grow, and we may not realize we're sending that message, I think that sets up a feeling of, wow, we're stuck. Because we tend to have needs and expectations. And if we can't address those and grow to more and more we in our relationship, we tend to go backwards.
And this means that I am willing to make changes for the health of our marriage, even if I don't feel like my partner is.
And then we want to be persistent in our changes. We want to be consistently doing the better thing, making the better choice. And what that means is we don't go for 2 weeks doing something really amazing that our spouse loves, and then we go back to our old self. That kind of
Yeah.
sets up a feeling of, I'm not really willing to change. I
Yeah.
want to try something and see, can I get what I want out of you? But willing to change is going to look like, I'm going to do this even if you aren't willing to change, just because it's the right thing.
For the long haul.
Yeah.
Having a positive attitude, realizing that maybe you're not going through the best time, the best season in your marriage now, but you have a positive attitude. You have a vision that we can have a healthy marriage. We can have a positive relationship. We have to have that to motivate us.
It's a foundation. In the midst of so much negativity, it's really it creates a hopelessness and a helplessness. But when we can be positive, because we're going through this one way or another, either in a positive standpoint or with a negative standpoint, it makes it easier for the spouse to respond well.
We need to have a commitment to meet our spouse's needs, that I'm going to do this. I'm committed to meet your needs, even if I don't feel like my needs at the moment are all being met.
Because we have to start somewhere. And we like to present, let's do the right thing between us and the Lord, regardless of whether someone else chooses to do the right thing or not.
Yeah.
We don't stand before God one day and say, well, I did the wrong thing because somebody else did the
Right,
wrong thing.
right.
We want to be able to answer to Him and look Him in the face, look Holy Spirit in the face day to day, and say, you know what? I lived for you and expressed you in every situation to the best of my ability.
That means that we don't have this kind of payback mentality
Yeah.
that, well, you did something that was negative, and so I'm going to do something negative back. That's kind of a self-sabotaging
Right.
attitude that is kind of like, well, if somebody poked a hole in a ship and it was sinking, you're poking more holes in it is not going to make it float better.
So an I will if she will, or I will if he will mentality is really selfish.
Yeah.
It's saying, you know what, if you will keep pace, I'll keep doing this.
Yeah.
But if you won't keep pace, if I don't see sufficient movement on your part, I'm not going to. Well, that's not being consistent. And that's not willing to grow.
Right.
That's more of a I'm willing to match you
Yeah.
sort of attitude.
Right. So, why do I have to do all the work? That's a negative attitude right there. So, you don't want to just be focusing on what you're doing and you don't see your spouse doing anything. Well, you may not be able to see what they're doing, but that doesn't mean your spouse isn't making any effort.
Yeah, that kind of implies a lack of desire to do the right thing, a lack of willingness to grow. And so we always want to give 100%. It's not a 50-50 setup.
No, it's not.
So I have to be 100% godly wife. Sean needs to be 100% godly husband. But we can't demand that of the other person, but we can be that
Right.
ourselves.
Yeah. What's in it for me? That's another bad attitude. That's just basically focusing on what can you do for me, not my buy-in on I'm going to
Yeah.
do everything that's needed. I'm going to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do for our
Yeah.
marriage.
We're not trying to invest in the other person only if I'm going to get a good return, but I'll invest elsewhere if I don't get what I want out of
Yeah.
you. Well, that's going to take down a relationship. Can you see the idea here? Is to pour into the marriage, support and strengthen the marriage and the other person. It tends to set us up where we get something similar in response.
There is the law of sowing and reaping. Whatever you sow, you're going to reap. If you plant good seeds in your marriage toward your partner, you're going to reap that in return. So making a time to talk about meeting each other's needs is a very important part.
And I think we need to say here, because we tend to hear this a lot as feedback, this is not for the abusive relationship. So let's always, in the videos, let's assume we're not in that zone. That's its own thing and needs special attention. It
Right.
needs counseling.
Right.
So we're talking about marriages that are not off in the deep end, basically,
Right.
but where we want to bring a closeness and especially develop an intimacy in our relationship.
Right. So when we're talking about meeting our partner's needs, we need to create a safe environment for that to happen in. And you're not the one to determine what is safe for your partner. Your partner's the one that determines that.
Because we're not going to open up and go vulnerable if we don't feel safe to do so.
Right. So just like a turtle hiding itself in the shell, you've got to give a safe environment for them to stick their head out and find out what they're thinking.
We can ask questions to get feedback from our spouse, but guess what? If we ask questions, we can't be judgmental about what we hear back.
That's right.
It's too easy to feel blamed or accused when our spouse points out something that we could improve in. But what if we shifted, and what if we have a mentality of, you're not finding fault, telling me I'm deficient, I don't measure up. Instead, you're pointing out areas where we can grow.
Yeah. We want to have a curiosity to find out, what does it feel like to be you? What does it take for our marriage to move forward? And all of these things are big components for growing in our relationship.